conversation, is your moment to voice it. So this is if you could write down what you're hoping to get and to learn from this session, it's going to be stuff I'm going to try to cover through the presentation, or I can go through that in the Q&A at the end if I haven't answered that. So here I'll probably give you like, 10 seconds because it's open form. And no worries if you don't have any specific questions right now. You can always ask them at the end. So, hopla, okay. So I'm gonna move. Okay, I'm gonna move forward then. Okay, cool. So, getting into the crux of the presentation. So first, why are we having this talk? We live in a world which is product centric. And for some of you that were there already, you probably have seen this product called HipChat. That was the kind of Slack alternative created by Atlassian. So it was the default way of communicating for a lot of tech companies in the early days. And I had the opportunity to work with it. It wasn't a great product, but it was definitely doing the job. And we all know the end of the story, which is that Slack eventually came in, delivered a much better product, and won a lot of the people's heart and a lot of market share. I think the interesting thing is not only that Slack came and kind of democratized the category, it's actually the end of the story. So I'm sure this is a graph you're familiar with. This is Teams entering the market and taking over on Slack's market really, really fast. So this is only up to 2019, but actually today they're at 170 million users. So really the blue curve kind of went up crazy, crazy. And the question I think this graph raises is whether or not building a great product is enough to be successful in 2024. And so one of the things that Microsoft did outstandingly well was, of course, to use their distribution channels to distribute Teams, but also to monetize very aggressively on the proximity they had with their customers. And so if you look at the revenue from Microsoft Teams versus Slack, the curves are even more split apart because Microsoft is just like mastering this game at monetizing it through their usage of their product. And so today we're going to try to understand how they've done it. A bit of context on why also beyond this example, why this talk I think is relevant. I think we've all read these articles about product-led growth and how some companies were very, very successful using it. I think that was the case 10 years ago. I think product-led was enough for many SaaS to thrive, like Slack, Dropbox. And I think at the time you could also focus on free self-serve models and on for your user acquisition. And the SaaS market was also less crowded. The growth tactics were easier, SEO in particular, and virality was more achievable. But that's not enough anymore. Out of the 107 public US listed companies that McKinsey studied last year, they found out that only a third of them were product-led and only 11 of them were high performers. They also found out that product-led companies spend on average 10% more on sales, marketing, and R&D, meaning that overall the organization is probably not as efficient as we would like it to be. So the market has matured and we have entered a new reality, making PLG much harder to execute. And since some of you are in that product-led motion, I think this is stuff that you probably already realize, and you're probably trying to articulate other complementary motions to generate more revenue. One more thing is that the willingness, there are some studies that show that the willingness to recommend new products also is decreasing overall. We are in a more and more noisy world, a much more saturated world, and it becomes much harder to actually talk to your friends or your colleagues and recommend product just because you're bombarded with it. And if you were to do it, you would be doing it all the time, and you would be this person recommending product all the time, which would make probably you a kind of like special person that I would love because I'm that person, but it's not the norm. So in my day-to-day, I'm lucky to be the front row of this movement. We were fully product-led at June, and we've moved slightly recently. And we also started by providing analytics for B2B SaaS for early stage companies that were also mostly product-led. And we really saw this movement of companies, adding some service layer, adding some sales layer, or even sometime switching to a more sales-led approach. So every month I'm jumping on like dozens of calls, and I really got a chance to see that. And this is what I want to share back today with you guys. Uh, this is what I call customer-led engagement. I couldn't find a better word. What we're seeing is these very successful companies like, again, Atio or Humans that prioritize creating exceptional product experiences, ensuring the ease of use, the seamless team expansion, but also making sure that there would be the right interaction with the revenue teams when needed. And this is what seems to be the key of the success of some of these companies. And I want to articulate why product data can be actually super powerful for you to make this happen, especially if you're like, you have a self-serve motion or you have a product which is at the core of your strategy. So the crux of these talks is actually realizing that product data is often, not always, but often a very good proxy for intent. If you use something, you probably need that something. And if you use it a lot, you're probably willing to pay more for it to get more value from it. So let's take a very simple analogy. Take a shop that is near your place that you drove by. Chances are that you're buying from it. And chances are that if a vendor in the shop comes to you, you listen to what they have to say, and potentially if they guide you in the right L or toward the right products, you will buy into their advice, or you might buy some of the things they recommend, right? And so in this section, I'm going to share very precisely ways we've seen B2B SaaS use this data, this product data, to actually generate revenue the same way kind of a vendor or someone in the shop would actually help people out. So this is like a visualization of the product data being kind of at the center of your organization. The order can change. Not every product onboards through customer support. I think given the survey at the beginning, probably the orange circle for most of you is before the dark pink circle. Probably you onboard through the product and actually use customer success more as a way to retain and activate. And then maybe you have sales resources already to do the upsell, cross-sell, renewals, maybe not. So maybe the blue circle is not there yet, but you get the idea, which is that overall product data is a way for you to enable a lot of these functions. So marketing brings signups usually if you have a marketing-led organization, and signups is like the first touch point with your product. And then the activation retention journey is something you should be familiar with. So today I'm going to go through the traditional journey, and I'm going to try to be very, very specific about ways that you can leverage your product data to actually generate more dollar revenue. So I'm going to split that into a typical product journey. It's not always linear, but it's a very good way to simplify the activation and the conversion steps. Especially if you're product-led, the activation and the conversion should be kind of happening together, two sides of the same coin. Expansion, if you have multiple plans, multiple pricings, is something that is quite interesting. Renewals, whether you charge monthly and you need to renew people every month, or multi-years or yearly plans, and it's like once in a while, this is something that can really move the needle. And preventing the churn, I think you voiced as that as being kind of the priority for you at the moment. So I'm going to try to spend a little bit more time on how product data can be a good proxy for preventing churn, and what are also the other signals that you may use. So let's crack on with the activation and the conversion. So a very easy way to understand where people are at in this activation conversion journey is to have some product milestones, some steps, very clear steps in your product that you know people need to take to be successful. So it sounds very simple to say it. There are multiple ways you can find these milestones. You can talk with people. Data analysis is a good way. You may check if the retention of your customers or the satisfaction of your customers is good when specific milestones are done. You can also start with your assumption. Given that you are seed or Series B, I assume the challenge for your stage is probably not that you don't have milestones, but more that the milestones might be changing and they might be evolving. So as you had more product lines, as you have more personalized, more ICPs, more kind of people that can use your product, the milestones might be different. And this is something that needs to be refined over time. So typically milestones will look like something like that for our product. People need to sign up. Then we know they need to engage with our analytics capabilities. Usually above 10 reports is a threshold for us. It's an activation threshold. Then we want them to become creators. So not only viewers, but engaged users of our product. And then as soon as they integrate June within their workflows, we know it's going to be a game changer for them because basically they put their analytics on autopilot in a way. So what are the actions you can take from this data to actually move the needle? So a very easy way to move people through the milestones, especially if you're self-served, is to send examples of completed milestones when people do not reach them. So you may have an automated email that goes out after 2 days, a couple of days. If the milestone number 1, let's say, is completed and the second milestone is not completed. So this can also be customer stories. This can be dev docs. If the milestone is like you have to set up your product and it's technical, you might send some dev docs. There are really great resources out there on like what playbooks can be executed, but oftentimes it's very simple things, and just talking with your customers will help you understand how it works. The interesting thing about what I'm showing right now is that you would think that for later stage companies it gets more complex. It doesn't. Like we really talk with very large tech startups every week, and pretty much it is what it's going to look like for them. They try to keep it very simple, especially at scale. Things can become very noisy. Sending personalized emails is something that come a lot on your strategic customers. So this is some sort of like founder/sales or kind of like CS approach, depend who owns the beginning of the journey and a little bit on your motion if you're sales-led or product-led. But typically sending a personal welcome email to trigger a conversation with and kind of like on your most important signups is something that can really move the needle. So this came from Framer initially, the building website that actually streamlines the experience for the most strategic customers. And what they will do is they will try to get everyone in the room. So they will try to target a couple of people that sign up or like the sponsor typically. And then they're going to try to arrange a meeting and they're going to try to convince the person to invite the entire team so they can get the buying decision on almost the first call, which is very, very powerful. CSM or customer success or customer experience or depends how you structure your organization again, are just a very obvious and good ways to make people progress through the milestones. We are sunk under emails. We oftentimes start using products that we forget to open again or we don't have time. Having a human that can re-engage one by one with a genuine conversation can make the whole difference. And here, it's a little bit like the sales game. It needs to be highly customizable and highly personalized for people to engage. And here, typically, short messages are going to outperform very long HTML automated emails. It's super important on this exercise that you prioritize who you send message to. So if this is like transactional emails and you're sending just like the same playbook for everyone, you can mass email that. But as soon as you will do one-on-one outreach and you have a decent amount of sign up, it's going to be just hard to work throughout the list of people. And chances are your people have other things to do. So here, typically, what you want to do is you want to prioritize your VIP customers, I call them, which are your ICP or people that really fit your targets. You think that have the most chance to be successful and pay money for your product. And here, ways to do that is basically to enrich your information. You may ask questions when they're on board, about who they are and so on. You might enrich with an enrichment tool. You might also pass this data from your CRM. Typically, CRMs are doing a great job to enrich your data. And so typically what we will do ourselves is we would pull the enriched data from your CRM, and we use HubSpot and Attio depending on the use cases. So this is an example here. So let's talk about the result because your guys are here for the result. What kind of result have we seen? On the low touch side of things, so sending this kind of automated emails when people are stuck, we've seen numbers around 10% of uplift. Like it can actually make a difference to generate 2-3 really good emails to people and also do some follow-ups. Since they're kind of like less engaging because they're automated and people will sense that, typically the uplift you see is lower, but they actually really move the needle. On the high touch format, and this was like mind-blowing for me, we've seen like really, really big uplift. Like we've seen easily on the ICP customers, a 20% increase of activation. We've seen easily like companies being able to catch up uh, one customer out of five that would have dropped if there wasn't the personal touch point. So we've seen numbers way above that too, especially when it's niche industry and when the message are very personalized and cross channels. So don't underestimate the power of the numbers here. But since you guys are kind of like Series B-ish state, I think this is something you probably figure out. This is typically how a CRM setup is going to look like. So this is a tree of navigation where when the milestone is achieved, then everything goes well. The person can progress the journey on the left. And when the milestone is not achieved, then you will see the arrows, the dotted lines that goes on the right, and some kind of automation is happening. And this is what we've seen here. We've seen actually the personal messages being shot. How does it work in your CRM? So this is a screenshot of HubSpot. Typically, you're going to have an alert in your CRM or in the tool you use for communication. And that could be like a task alert or a column not being updated, a color changing. We're going to see that in a second. So I'm going to talk about the expansion case. So let's say people have started using your product. Then you have the conversion event that happened early on or after a couple of months, depends your time to convert. Eventually, there is a way for you to expand. You have multiple ways to price people, multiple plans, maybe even an enterprise plan. How can you use product data to make this happen? So there are two things that we've seen working again and again by measuring. The first one is the number of active seats. So knowing how many people are using your product in many SaaS is a good proxy that there is a great adoption and that that team that has greatly adopted your product would want at some point to push some of the boundaries of the usage they have. Like if you have like 100 people using, one feature, it's very likely that they can they're in love with your product, they get value from it, and they would want to touch some of the other value prop that you've built, if that of course is the same persona. The other one, which is super interesting and also kind of like was a surprise to me, is the engagement over time. So here, what you're seeing, just to be explanatory, these are computed traits. So these are ways to compute how many active seats you have or the increase of usage overall or in a specific feature. These are stuff that you can do in your analytics. So this is something June does really well. Or this is something that typically we will see people doing in the data warehouse. So typically they will push their product data to a warehouse, and then they would have intermediary computation, and they would use their data resources to do it. One of the value of June that we provide is avoiding having to involve a data person to do it because it's very time consuming and expensive. So the engagement over time is interesting because if there is an increase of usage, it's not only that there is an expansion of seats, it's also there is an expansion of like kind of vertical usage in a way. So like the account overall is used in a healthy way. The last part is the cross-product interaction. So if you are like in a product-led motion, which seems to be the case, chances are you may have multiple plans with gated features. So this is a screenshot from Intercom. And in that case, there is a feature called survey that I don't have access to with my current plan. And so they will tell me I need to upgrade for that. And what Intercom would do is they would actually capture the intent on people checking this paywall. So they would send tracking notifications. And we know that because we used to work at Intercom. These are really strong signals that people are aware that the feature exists. And it's also a very good signal that they might be interested into using that new feature within your product. So here I'm going to start with the high touch again, because it's what delivered the most uplift when well executed. What you want here is you want to engage a conversation one-on-one with this potential lead on the upsell, and you want to be very reactive. So you want to know almost right away when the person has been interested, because maybe a week later would be like the need has kind of vanished a little bit. It was kind of like very point in time. So there are many ways you can get notification. CRMs are a good way. So in the back, what you see here is HubSpot. You may have a communication tool like that you use, like Slack. or you may use a success platform like June, for instance, that will also get you that. Here, it's very important to, again, work on the high priority accounts because they're not worth all the same. So as soon as you will get these nudges, they can become quite noisy. And so you probably want to limit the amount of nudges. Assignment is going to be also important. You want to assign the work. If there is a, 50% that you need to interact with in a week, and you have like two success person or two founders that want to do this job, the question becomes who works with on what. And so assigning owners is a key criteria. You may, if you use Slack notification, you might just react with an emoji saying like I'm on it or something like that. Creating automated emails seems to work really well for that for some reason. Even though I talk about the iTouch, there is something to understand, which is that your customers don't all prefer to talk to a human. There are some people that would just prefer to receive transactional messages. These people might be just very busy. These people might be more introverts, or these people might be like, not really interested in the beginning, but your email would just land at the right moment, something like that, and they will investigate a little bit what you have to offer. So one of the interesting thing here is that the two processes I just mentioned are not mutually exclusive. We see very successful medium-sized SaaS using both. It seems like the automated messages is a baseline that you would want to reach, you would want to do anyway, in case people want to self-serve. And on top of that, you want to prompt the manual outreach, which is very tailored, very one-to-one, very customized. That feels almost like, that feels like a human that on top of the automated messages jump on you. And this combination is ultimately what works and what we've seen people adopting. Success is always here. I put that again. Just being able to engage with the people that seems to have the need. I think what I love about success doing the work here instead of sales is that it feels a little bit like a wolf with a sheep coat. It feels like someone much closer to you that you can relate to, and is not here to sell you. So we've seen a lot of software solution engineer or things like that roles do this work. So for instance, Airtable, I think, is a great example. Airtable does the upsell, the expansion, with engineers. Said engineers. Actually, they're incentivized on the revenue too, but you wouldn't tell they're selling you anything, which I think is a very powerful motion. Results we've seen here. Upsell is a slightly more advanced topic. So we've seen a low touch increase by 5% on average. And high touch can be, again, quite game changing. Once you build a relationship with people and they trust you enough to pay you money, it's not crazy to increase, by 40% the money they will pay you the next year. A lot of times you could see much higher prices. Like you could move people to your enterprise plan at some point and things like that. So we've seen like 100%, 200% all the time. I think this is a very, very powerful motion, especially if you work on your net dollar retention, if this is one of your North Star, because net dollar retention is literally how many people you keep over time. So it's a function of your churn, and it's how much they're paying you the next year. So the expansion is going to be one of the main driver of your net dollar retention. So if you're working on that, that could be a great lever. I'm going to talk about renewals. So whether people are going to stick at the end of the period. So this is slightly more for a product that sells yearly or bi-yearly or multi-year contracts. If you sell monthly, probably you just want people to retain, and that's good enough. But if you have contracts that are year-long or plus, what you want to measure here is accounts that are coming at coming to a renewal date. So there are multiple tools to do that. Again, the CRM seems to be one of the favorite approaches from people. You can use a CS platform for that too. What you want is a list of the prospect with their renewal dates and the one that are coming to an end very soon. You want to identify that first and foremost. Another thing that works really well for renewals is to find your champion. So the person that uses your product the most. It doesn't always relate to the most senior person, but oftentimes the way a renewal works is someone would say, oh, this is the end of the year. We're going to decide if we keep butter. Is someone using it? And if no one voices yes in the room, then you're going to have a hard time renewing your contract. So being close to the champion and understanding who that person is to try to build a relationship further and then enable that person to convince the rest of the organization if needed, or just like to be vocal, is something that seems to work the best at this stage. Okay, so what can you do here? Again, you want to be reactive. So you want some sort of notification, some sort of alerts that a renewal is coming to an end. Typically, we see 6 to 8 weeks before the renewal dates as being the ideal moment. This is if your contract doesn't say like people need to renew at least cancel at least 4 weeks before or 2 months before, right? I'm assuming the cancellation is the day before the renewal. Otherwise, you probably have to push that earlier on even more. So Slack is a good one. Automated emails, interestingly enough, you would think that renewals are such a sensitive topic, especially if you sell yearly, that you wouldn't want to send an automated email. The truth is that it creates some transparency and it creates some trust with your customers. So this is an example of Slack that says that the renewal is on February 19. And this is an email they send to everyone. Even if you're a large customer, you're still going to receive that email from Slack because it's their way to show, to build some trust, to show that they're like not bullshitting you, things like that. Customized offer here. This is, again, the way to go. Chances are if people have like yearly multi-year deals, they didn't buy just with the credit card by themselves. They went through a conversation. And so you want to keep that conversation going forward and kind of like understand what they use, what they didn't use from the product you have sold them the year before, and how they should move forward. If they just use the minimum of what you offer them and you think they can get more, this is maybe also a chance for expansion. If not, then you would probably want to set some success milestones and make sure you build toward them with them. Another thing that really surprised me is the power of sharing the usage data with your customers. So it's something that actually a lot of products have. I'm going to go back to Slack because I checked it today. I don't know if you're aware with this feature, but Slack has an analytics that works. So if you're an admin of Slack, or if you're like someone running a company or in charge of the ITs and the toolings, Slack is going to tell you exactly how many people have used the product every month. And then also if they've used like private channels, public channels, tells you a lot about how your company organization is run. And you would think this is just a nice to have feature, but actually for Slack, sharing that is a direct way for the sponsor or the admins or whoever is the decision maker and the buying person at the company to justify renewing Slack and understanding the way it works. So something we've seen people doing is sharing screenshot of their customers' own usage in their analytics, or even embedding some of the usage in analytics. So I think this one is also surprisingly powerful and goes hand in hand with the email I just mentioned before. Results you can get from renewing people. You could increase that number by 4% in low touch with automated emails. People love them, honestly. And then in high touch, you would see numbers around 20% if well executed. Again, we've seen some numbers much higher than that. I'm going to talk about the churn, and I know this is the most probably the most interesting one for you today. So a very easy way to compact all the complexity of your product, all the complexity of your services, of like what you have to offer as a company to your customer, is to have a score, to have like a number, one simple number. This is typically referred as a health score, which goes between 0 and 100. And typically, it will be built out of 5 components. 2 of these components are related to product data. That's why I'm talking about it. 3 are not. So typically, you want to make sure people are set up. You want to make sure people are engaging. So it's the number of seats, the usage, the things we discussed before. People might be set up and using your product, but they might hate you. So you want to capture some sort of customer satisfaction. This can be NPS, CSAT, whatever you prefer. The CSM pulse is a manual input that success teams will feel when they have a last touch point with a lead. So typically they would give a score of like looks healthy, neutral, looks unhealthy. And this has a big weight into your health score. It might actually overtake all the rest because they might be set up. They might have given you like a good NPS last year or 6 months ago, but actually the last CSM we touch base figure out that the account is not at all healthy, and you want to react on that. The last one is the what I call the cherry on the cake. When you get started with people, you may capture their achievement, the goal they have, and you actually might be very true to yourself and measure if people have achieved the goal. So maybe they have set up your product, they're satisfied, they look healthy, but maybe someone is going to challenge your tool because you were purchased in the first base for achieving a goal which you may not have achieved. And so typically what we see people doing is we see people capturing these signals, passing them to a tool that centralizes it, and then creating the score. We wrote a guide about that on june.so/guides. And then it's the first guide, I think, and it's not gated, so you can check it out if you want. And yeah, I think knowing that, I mean, we're going to talk about how you can react to a health score that goes down, but I think it's pretty obvious already. So one thing you want is for the VIP customers, the ICP customers, you want to notify the team of a falling health score. Again, the weight that you're going to give is depending a little bit on the signals. But when the score goes down, if you have built your health score the right way, then a falling health score should be a significant reason for you to be worried maybe about an account. So you want to notify that. Same topic that we discussed earlier with notification. You want to make that very visible. So there are great ways in CRMs, like this is again HubSpot. They have this thing called, I think, badges. I think they changed the name. Labels. I don't know if you see that. It's the little color in the label that actually indicates when an account is healthy or not healthy. So you want to give that, you want to make it that simple. Like, your product is complex. You've filled a lot of very complex thing into this score. Like when it moves, just make it simple. Like it's already a lot of data and a lot of data plumbing, depending the path you go. And then what you want to do is you want to re-engage with these people to save these accounts, right? And this is different from the activation and the retention. This is what I call at-risk playbooks. It's discussions you want to have, hard discussions you want to have with these people, through discussion about why you think they're not getting the value from your product or why you think they're not using your product. Sometimes it's just they went on holidays and it's fine. Like for 2 weeks, there is a drop, but sometimes it's something else. And here you just want to have this, again, transparent conversation on seems like you haven't been using the platform very much recently. I'm happy to pause on the payment. Like if that's the case, I'm happy to pause on the payment and jump on the call to really make sure you're getting the most out of the platform and something like that. Sometimes you can't do anything about it, right? Sometimes they just don't have the problems anymore or a solution is not doing the work. So here in low touch, we would see people saving a couple of percent points with of churn. And with high touch, again, a much bigger one. The numbers here are not crazy because once people start to really disengaging with your product, usually it's a little bit too late. So that's why you want to actually work on the retention and the earlier journey and not always wait for the churn to happen. You may have an intermediary step here, which is not at churn risk, but like, midly healthy. And this, you could work on it and you should see actually better numbers. Okay, so this shouldn't be here, right? I think I think we wanted to have it in the beginning, but we put it at the end. So I'm going to wrap up. It's been 35 minutes already. Jacob, I see your emojis. I'm going to wrap up with a couple of words on implementation because I showed a lot of screenshots, a lot of tools, and I assume you had them figure out, but maybe you don't. So how does this whole thing work? So oftentimes, product data goes in a data warehouse or data lake. And then the only way to pull out multiple data source is a BI tool, a business intelligence tool. We see a lot of people doing that and having then the data trapped into the BI tool because it requires some data skills, let's say. And so the tips here is if you can pass this data to operational tools, the tools that your sales are using. So, like your CRM, for instance, the tool that your success are using could be your CRM, or it could be Slack, or it could be a CS platform. you're going to have a much easier journey just because the data is directly actionable, and a lot of the things I mentioned are going to be just at your hand. Product analytics is historically neglecting customer-facing people. It's very much for product managers or product teams as abroad, engineers, and so on. So oftentimes you would want to break through that category. So either you would want to push that data to some of the operational tools you have, or adopt a tool which is not only a product analytics, but something that does a little bit more for you. And then the operational tool, I mentioned that already. Today, there are a couple of ways you can do that. So either you could have first-class integration between your product and then the destination tools you have. The pros is that it's going to be easy to set up. Then it depends if it's your use case. You may go for workflow automations, buy a tool like Zapier, Make, and just do the plumbing yourself. You might pull data out from your data warehouse with something called a reverse ETL. This is very flexible, but it's very expensive and it's quite technical. And then you can do everything in-house, which is what later stage companies typically do. So typically the journey would look like first-class integration for startups. Then at some point they try to buy a tool off the shelf, like a reverse ETL. Eventually they build it themselves. And obviously we try to, I mean, you see the logo of my company here. We're trying to make sure this is not the case and that at any scale you can use our products. Okay, so takeaways from today. PLG is alone is not enough anymore. Very few companies have the luxury and the chances, and we are not one of them. And I don't know if you're one of them, but if you're not, then I hope you got value from today. Second outcome is that to move the needle, you have to actually put some actual legwork to drive a conversation and sales. And the last piece is that product data and usage is a leverage. If it's used across the board, pre-post sales, and B2B generates data. And for the variety of reasons we discuss, it's not being maximized, but there is a lot you can get from it. All right, so this is the end. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to reach out, this is my email, enzo@june.so. This is the guy that's mentioned to you. And also we have a special discount for butter. If you ever want to try the product, it's butter with a capital B, not Reforge. I just copy a screenshot that's from another slide, but there is an actual butter discount. So feel free to use it, BUTTER. And thanks so much for listening.
Thanks so much for having us, Enzo. This was actually amazingly educational, and it was targeting like a product like ours perfectly. So I think I learned a lot today. Super happy about that. Wanted to leave a few minutes as well for Q&A from the audience. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put your hands up. We'll just take a few minutes to wait. Yeah, you can put them in chat, Martina. You can unmute. We're a small crowd of 9 people, so both things work. Yeah, go ahead, Martina. Want to speak?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It was super interesting to hear. Thinking about engagement, I mean, this is something that we also try to do. How do you measure engagement and also increased engagement? And through that, how do you identify who is champion? Like, what are those levels for you?
Yeah, great question. So, okay, how do you measure engagement and how do you increase engagement? So, measure engagement, I think people tend to over complexify this topic. But I think at the end, it boils down to something very simple. I think typically if you're building a SaaS, you probably have a navigation tree on the left or at the top with the core areas of your product, right? And if you have like a more advanced product, maybe each section has like subsection, right? What I would say is engagement is just trying to understand which section of your product people are using. Just having this high level view of like, there is 4 main ways to use our product, and people, overall are more using A, B, C, or D. I think that's already a lot. So what I would do is I would check the engagement with the section, which means when they use it, how many times they use it, And then I would just check over time if that seems healthy to you. So depending on the maybe the person you're attracting, maybe you want them to use that part of your product or the entire product or that part of the product. So it's also a segmentation work, right? Like maybe that audience should use this section, that audience should use this section, and so on. And then about like increasing the usage, the engagement. I think the ultimate question you want to answer is what is the ideal frequency of usage of that feature that makes them successful? And you want to lean toward that point. If your product is a product that people need to use every day, like Slack, then you want to increase the engagement to get the daily usage, right? For instance, on June, there is an analytics portion where people can do all kind of data analysis. We found out that two times a week is enough. Like people don't check the analytics every day. 2 times a week is great for them, and other parts of the product are used every day. So I think that's where you want to go. And then how you increase your engagement is a mix of a lot of things, right? It's like making sure the product delivers on the value, that people see it, and then if they're stuck, then make sure that there is the right touch point services to get them there. And this is a hard one, right? Because once people give you a chance, if you don't deliver on the value, then maybe they will draw back and stop using your product. So I think that's also why you need to keep re-engaging with people to bring them back, even if it's manual at the beginning. And eventually that's also why you build a product and you improve it. It's so that the next set of people that come to your product will get a better experience. This is a sad truth, but like the truth is that sometimes you dry out your beta users or your early customers because your product wasn't great. But because of them, now there are some people that can come and can enjoy the product, And I forgot your third question. There was
yeah, it was kind of connected. So who's the champion? How do you know what is a champion?
The champion most of the time is your user. Like it's very hard, it's very rare to have a champion, someone who absolutely loves you in your company, like speaks very highly of you and never uses your product. Like I've seen that, but very few times. So typically someone who is like in the trenches using your product all the time and hopefully getting value all the time from your product, hopefully usually this is going to be your champion. It doesn't have to be only the number one person, the most active. It can be like someone at the top that loves you, but it will be someone at the top. And so and the best visualization for that, in my opinion, is to find the frequency of usage of your product, whether it's daily, weekly, or monthly. Have dots, and then see if they're green on that frequency. And then like just you can have an overview of like your users and like the days, the weeks, the months where they were active, just with the dots. And that way, just at a glimpse, roughly where are the people. And then you need to put a bit of color. What is their role? Do they have influence? Things like that,
Oh, thank you. That's good.
All right. Any other questions for Enzo? Okay, I think we'll just say thanks again so much for attending this here, and a huge thank you to you, Enzo, for taking us through this. This is awesome. We will be sharing the recording of this afterwards. I started recording a little bit late, but we'll be for sure. I got most of the golden nuggets. So many, and I think I'll have to rewatch it. As you guys know, we're running a full festival here today with tons of workshops. And the next one that's upcoming will be about edge cases and unhappy paths, a road to creativity and inspiration at 3 p.m. CET. And it'll be on this Zoom link. So if you want to, then you can jump over there directly after this. But otherwise, just thanks so much, Enzo. Appreciate this.
One last word on Butter. You guys are killing it, and it's very impressive what you've been that you pull out scenes in such a short time. So congrats on the team, super for the product and launch. I hope
Thanks so much.
You will finish number one. I have no doubt.
Yes, we need to be number one. We're hustling for votes. I think I'll go down on the street, like go from door to door, and ask people to vote on product. I mean, I have zero dignity. So yeah. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.